What is up, denizens of the interwebs? It's Arza Chats here, coming at you with another video. And it's another day, another government agent trying to restrict the rights of everyone online under the guise of social justice. Last week, a Virginia governor came out and demanded that Valve and Steam must enact strict policy to curb the instances of anti-Semitism and white supremacy on their website. And this is all being substantiated by a claim made by the ADL, or the Anti-defamation League, which is the biggest oxymoron of an organization that I've ever seen, releasing a statement that used an AI to determine that there were over 1.8 million instances of anti-Semitism and white supremacy on Steam. But of course, there's a whole lot of holes in this story, so like, subscribe, and let's check out those articles. Coming from Phantom Pulse, written by John F. Trent, U.S. Senator Mark Warner threatens federal action against Steam if it does not take action against alleged anti-Semitism claims. Now, as I said, Mark Warner is a U.S. Senator from the state of Virginia who has threatened federal action against Steam and its parent company Valve if it does not take action against alleged anti-Semitism supposedly proliferating on the website. Warner posted on X, "New, I'm taking action against hateful and anti-Semitic rhetoric proliferating on Steam. We need to ensure that social networks aren't breeding grounds for extremist violent groups." If that's what you're concerned about, Steam isn't where you need to be focused. I believe it's Blue Sky you should be worried about with, all their CSAM on there. Attached to the press release also revealed U.S. Senator Mark R. Warner, DVA, today, so he's a Democrat. I didn't have to know that because I could have guessed. Today urged leadership at Valve, a prominent video game company, to respond to reports that their gaming distribution and social network platform Steam is hosting extremist and hateful content, including over 1.5 million users and tens of thousands of groups that share and amplify anti-Semitic, Nazi, sexuality, or gender-based hate and white supremacist content. It added, Senator Warner called for broad action against Valve to bring its content moderation standards in line with the industry standards and crack down on the rampant proliferation of hate-based content. And by industry standards, what they're referring to is far-left censorship, basically making it so the only speech acceptable is the far-left speech. The kind of things that will get you banned on Blue Sky will also get you banned on Steam. You can't use freedom of speech because that's the enemy of the people. If you have access to free speech, then they can't control you as easily. But the thing that they seem to be ignoring is Steam is a community-based webpage, and one rooted in extreme levels of 4chan bullshittery and irony. None of the people really believe any kind of quote-unquote hateful rhetoric they post on Steam. It's ironic. And I know the idea of irony is lost on you because you have the IQ of a small bird. Of note, Warner's team cited a report from the Anti-defamation League claiming that more than 1.8 million unique pieces of extremist or hateful content, including explicitly anti-Semitic, neo-Nazi, and Islamist terrorist material, were identified on Steam. Oh, so now you have an issue with them. Huh. Strange that only matters when it benefits you. Were identified on Steam with the world's largest and most popular online gaming marketplace. According to the ADL, the data was allegedly created by an AI called Hate Vision, because there's no inherent bias there, that was trained on 65,954 instances of hate symbols that was then used to identify 78.7% of extremist symbols in the test data set recall, and 97.1% of the symbols it classified as extremist were actually extremist. Problem is, sure, you could have 100% identification, but that depends on who's confirming it. You could show two different people 100 pictures of flowers, and one of them might be able to guess the right kind of flowers, and the other one might not know their flowers, but they will know a bitch when they see one.
I may not know my flowers, but I know a bitch when I see one.
Your definition of whether or not these are properly identifying extremist measures is meaningless because we don't know what those measures were, and we don't know who you were using to substantiate the findings of the AI, and we don't know what you used to train the AI. If you trained the AI to mark all Pepe memes as actual racism, then, your findings are completely fraudulent and irrelevant, because if you think Pepe is a racist caricature, my brother in Christ, you need to find, Christ. The ADL has previously been caught creating suspect reports in order to convince companies and politicians to take action according to its desires. In fact, Rachel Cowart, who founded the research department at Take This, who is, one of these activist groups that just launder money and try to strong-arm companies into hiring them to force practices. They recently almost went out of business, but required a $50,000 random donation that people are pretty sure came directly from the American government, because that's not corruption or anything. and served as research director, revealed in an interview with Ars Technica that she created the Take This organization after encountering a 2019 National Representative Survey from the ADL. It found that nearly 1 in 4 respondents were exposed to extremist white supremacist ideology in online games. However, in a Game UX 22 presentation sponsored by Bungie, Cowart admitted that polling was a crock of crap. In 2019, the ADL reported that nearly 1 in 4 was 23% of game players are exposed to white supremacist ideology in game. She continued, and honestly, somebody asked me earlier how I got into this work because it seems like I have a very niche area. Well, you got into that work because it's a niche area. The thing is, when people find a small niche like this where they can really easily extort money for bullshit work, they're going to do it. I would like to point every single one of my viewers to the recent debacle known as the grievance papers, in which several online personalities decided to test whether or not the APA was going to do its due process and actually research the studies that are submitted, and submitted a whole bunch of crock studies that were founded on nothing, made up on the spot, one of which was about rape culture in dog parks, and another one was Mein Kampf translated into English with the word Jew swapped out for white. They submitted around 15 pages, and a good number of them got through, a significantly larger number than they expected to, and even more of them were on the board of being reviewed at that moment, most likely to be accepted and published, leading to the creators of the study having to call the study early and come clean about it, completely destroying the reputation of the APA, though they never really had a reputation to begin with, because it proved that instead of publishing science, they were much more inclined to publish ideology, which is exactly what the ADL does. The ADL doesn't give a shit about truth, doesn't give a shit about statistics. They care about ideology. The ADL has been sued for misrepresenting facts before. Coincidentally, the lawsuit was, in fact, for defamation. Now, of course, because the ADL is the government's baby, they threw out the case unfairly. But of course, what would you expect from someone who's being propped up solely by laundering money from people who think they're making a difference in the world? But it was this report, and when I saw that, what I thought that number is so high, it can't be that high. It can't possibly be that high. And I called Daniel Kelly, who led the research, and he was like, no, that's the number. And I was like, okay, we have to do something about that. It's terrifying. In 2021, they did another report looking at the same thing, and they found the number was closer to 1 in 10. But it's unclear whether this is actually changing the landscape or just a difference in sampling, as it is with research sometimes, she admitted. And I'll tell you, it's probably because you had a much smaller stint in what you wanted to focus on. You had much less bias going into the study, meaning that you found a much smaller number, because you cannot claim that hatred is on the rise while also saying that people who experience it is going down. Because you went from 1 in 4 to 1 in 10. That's not comparable, only in the span of 2 years. Nevertheless, in a letter sent to the Valve Corporation's president and co-founder Gabe Newell, Warner threatened Valve must bring its content moderation practices in line with industry standards or face more intense scrutiny from the federal government for its complicity in allowing hate groups to congregate and engage in activities that undoubtedly put Americans at risk. At risk of what? Engaging with ideas you don't approve of? Engaging with concepts that don't meet the government-regulated censorship? I'm not really sure what you're trying to say here, good old Warner. What you're calling for is a violation of Gabe Newell's and every user on Steam's right to their First Amendment. And to be very clear, I would really rather not live in England. I don't want to be stabbed. I don't want my son to be named Mohammed. And most importantly, I don't want to be at risk of being arrested for something I said on Steam or on Twitter. Warner then decided that he had gotten a pair of big boy pants and decided to demand Newell answer a series of questions about Valve and Steam's content moderation policies. So first, let's take a look at that ADL study that they claim to have done over the hate content on Steam. The first thing they note is that it is popular online gaming marketplace with a lot of the stuff coming from user-created content. Now, several of the things that they failed to acknowledge is how much user-created content is far left, is hateful leftist rhetoric, is anti-heterosexual content, because there's a whole lot of that, say, in the Dragon Age discussion board, but I don't see them mentioning that. How much of this is the kind of rhetoric that the ADL is actually in favor of, but is equally, if not more hateful than what they're claiming to fight against? Furthermore, they continue to talk about the fact that more than 15,000 accounts have profile pictures containing the logos and flags of foreign terrorist organizations like ISIS, Hezbollah, Al-Qassam brigades, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Hamas, as well as the names of known terrorists. COE also identified anti-Semitic symbols like the Happy Merchant and Nazi imagery like the Totenkampf, Swastika, Sonnenrad, and others. Posts with these symbols remained on the platform despite previous concerns raised by government bodies and policymakers. Well, ADL, I got a bit of a little bit of news for you. You're looking at the community of shitposters. These people don't think these are true ideologies. They're making fun of them. And while I guarantee you there are probably some Islamic extremists on there, I guarantee you there are no Nazis. Because if you actually try to spread any kind of Nazi discussions, you get banned. You get silenced off of discussion boards, and it violates the TOS of Steam. I guarantee you there's no actual hateful rhetoric. Any rhetoric that could be deemed hateful is Occam's razor, much more likely to be trolling. And what's even more ridiculous is down here where they mention some of the findings, such as copypastas. COE detected 1.18 million unique instances of extremist and hateful copypastas, 54% of which were white supremacists and 5% were anti-Semitic. 5% is barely within the range of statistical significance, so I'm not sure what your deal with that is. But ADL, you have fingers, you have a keyboard, you're on the internet, so you must have access to Google. Copypastas are not something people believe. Copypastas are trolls. That is a trolling mechanism. I hate rats. Rats make me crazy. Crazy? I was crazy once. So crazy they put me in a rubber room. A rubber room with rats. Rats make me crazy. That is a copypasta. That is the point of copypasta. A copypasta is designed to be annoying, to be large, and to be substantial in a post, and get people saying the same thing because it is funny. Not because they believe it, not because they're hateful. I don't hate rats. I think rats can be cute from time to time, and I most certainly would never end up in a rubber room with rats. I'm going to say the copypasta because it's funny. That doesn't mean I endorse or believe it. There's a significant number of Steam users and group pages use an avatar profile picture, which is normal, with potentially extremist or hateful symbols. At least you put the potentially there to avoid absolute defamation. Multiple users can have the same avatar image. COE identified 827,758 profiles with avatars that contain extremist or hateful symbols. Now, that might seem like a pretty large number, but what happens if we, put that in context? According to this, the number of Steam users out there is around 132 million monthly active users. Okay, so taking that number, what percentage of these users have hateful imagery? According to ADL, at least. Whether or not they're actually hateful is, probably false. They're probably not. But taking them at their word, 1 in 159 users has that. That seems like a lot. What about this? Just the straight number? Well, 131,172,242 users do not have hateful imagery. So it is such a minute fraction that actually bothers to have this kind of hateful rhetoric in their stuff. Your point is completely moot. Yeah, sure, they might exist. According to you, they exist. But this is not statistical significance. This does not stand up to any kind of actual measure. This would be like saying, in a crowd of 1 million people, there's one person with syphilis. It's a stupid claim. Why does it matter? You're not making any kind of logical argument. Furthermore, ADL, if you're really concerned with combating hate speech, the way you do that is through open dialogue, not through censorship. Censorship makes people hold their beliefs harder than instead of encouraging them to release those beliefs. You tell someone you can't say that, they will believe it even more because they have an issue with being told what to believe. Whereas if you allow for open discussion, you give these people the chance to be proven wrong. COE also identified 184,622 instances of hateful or extremist keywords on Steam. Additionally, 18,352 groups use extremist or hateful keywords on their group profiles, and the most used keywords in extremist or hateful context on Steam communities were 1488, shekel, and white power. My bad, I misread that. It's shekels. Shekel isn't a fucking hate term. It is a kind of currency. It is the currency of old Israel. What the fuck are you talking about? It is a... Yes, because it's tied to Israel, it must be anti-Semitic. That's the kind of logic we're working with, to show you that these people don't have a brain in their tiny ass heads. And those are those who use 1480 and white power. I guarantee you it's ironically. Because guess what? Very few people actually believe in those sentiments. And most of the ones that I know who do, they're not white. COE analysts identified thousands of profiles that glorify violent extremists like white supremacist mass shooters, which would be ironic. These include avatar pictures featuring mass shooters, references to manifestos, and stills from live streams attacks like the 2019 Christchurch, New Zealand shooting, in some cases like 18-year-old who attacked a cafe in Turkey in August 2024. Users posting this content on Steam have subsequently committed acts of offline violence. I'm sorry. Wait. Users posting this content on Steam have subsequently committed acts of offline violence. Where? This is not a kind of statement you can just make without substantiating. They are implying that every single person who has a hateful image on their profile are someone who are committing offline acts of violence. I need you to substantiate that claim because you are not. How do you know whether or not someone on Steam is committing acts of violence? Their information is private, meaning you can't look them up to see if they have a criminal record. If they're not admitting to it and you can't prove it, then this is defamation. This is lying. So ADL is lying once again by claiming that these are acts of violence. We believe this is the most comprehensive snapshot of hate and extremism, well, through your stinted snapshot, with your filter on the world, I'm sure it is. Present on Steam to date, said Oren Segal, VP of the ADL Center on Extremism. The clear gas in Steam's moderation policies not only normalize hate and extremism in the gaming community, it also introduces users to the ideologies and movements that animate real-world violence. Well, you have an issue with people having these being integrated with these ideologies. Disprove the ideologies. There's the father of DNA, He's a great man. He discovered a lot of science. He was recently stripped of his title of the father of DNA. He was completely disbanded. He was completely kicked out of the lab he invented to learn about DNA because he asked the question, is there an IQ link between races? That's all he asked. He didn't study it. He didn't mistreat anyone. He just asked a question, and he was immediately stripped of all honoraries. If you ban someone for asking the question, it leads people to thinking there's an answer that you don't like. Instead of coming to the conclusion that there is no link, which is what we hopefully would find, and what this is the reason you're censoring them is because that's the accusation you're making, that there is no link. But by censoring him, you prevent him from discovering that, and that leads people to suspect that there is a link. By banning speech, you make the speech stronger. I know you all hate J.K. Rowling, even though she's a crazy feminazi. So you guys should really like her. She disagrees with you on exactly one point. But J.K. Rowling accidentally made one of the most based points when she wrote Harry Potter. If you remember, the power of Voldemort grew because people were afraid to say his name. You couldn't say the word Voldemort, otherwise everyone around you would freak out and get all scared. And it's partially because he actually did jinx his name, giving it literal power. But the thing is, his name had power before he jinxed it to be able to know when someone said it, because people were afraid of it. Words have the meaning you give them. Words do not have inherent meaning. Subsequently, slurs only have the power you give them. That is why there isn't a slur in the book you could call me that would offend me. I shattered the mind of one of my professors by telling him that the F slur does not offend me as a bisexual man. Because, well, words cannot stop me because I'm not a child. And the idea of this is you are basically creating a generation of children who cannot handle controversial ideas. But by creating people who cannot handle controversial ideas, you only empower and educate those who have controversial ideas, as they are the only ones who are capable to argue their perspective. The ADL is claiming that they're trying to create safety. No, they're trying to extort Steam for money, and they're trying to wave their big stick around and proving exactly why the government needs to be decentralized. But of course, it doesn't end here. The ADL has a few demands for Steam. First of all, adopt policies prohibiting extremism. Currently, there is no policy on Steam that prohibits the presence of known extremists, extremist recruitment, the celebration of extremist groups and movements, or even the expression of the hateful ideologies that animate extremists. While the game industry is, in general, behind the social media industry in adjusting the abuse of their products by extremist actors, we have seen some progress in the last year. ADL reviewed a recent progress and wrote that 3 current models for game companies to potentially implement anti-extremist policies: adopt policies prohibiting hate, enforce policies accurately at scale, audit and red team content moderation practices to close loopholes, engage with civil society, academics, and researchers. Well, guarantee if you engage with researchers and academics, you're not going to be eliminating hate. You actually be encouraging more hate, just of a different kind. They also make a demand for policymakers. Prioritize transparency legislation in digital spaces that include online multiplayer games, literally enforcing The restriction of freedom of speech online. The kind of thing that, well, is a violation of the freedom of speech. I dare the ADL to attempt to actually do anything about this, because if they do, they will be struck down, as this is an objective violation of the First Amendment. And there goes, especially for you, Senator Warner, try something, because you will lose that case, assuming it goes to a fair court. They also request that you establish a national gaming safety what the fuck is this? Fucking feminist frequency and their, what was that, anti-misogyny team, where if they spot something misogynist, they would send a gamer to join the lobby and kill the hateful person. But of course, it's all a giant ruse. That was just a laughing stock. It doesn't work because it's not real. And support research efforts with additional resources. So, lawmakers, spend all your money to money launder to our cause so we get to pocket more money. Makes sense. I totally believe someone who tells you the solution is to give them more money. The ADL is coming here smashing all your windows, and tomorrow they're coming in with new windows to replace the old ones, so long as you've got the cash to replace it. This is the definition of an insurance scam being performed at the government level. Freedom of speech is something that will always be under attack, because it is the kind of thing that scares people who want to control the population. It scares people who have who have no ideas of honesty, who have no ideas of integrity, and have no desires to give the people the power that they are given by the Constitution. These people hate you, they hate everyone around you, and they only wish to prop up their own people for whatever nefarious reasons they have. These are dangerous people who are solely hell-bent on destroying your freedoms, so long as they make a quick buck and get to feel powerful for a day, where consequences be damned. This is an attack not on Valve, though they are attacking Valve because it's the place to get the most money from, but it is an attack on freedom of speech as a whole, and we must ubiquitously stand up and say, no, you don't get to take our rights. And this is why, for the last, 10 years, 15 years, gamers have been enemy number one, is because they cannot stand the fact that we have far more control than they like, and we don't like being messed with. We just want to enjoy our peace and quiet and play our video games. No YouTuber wants to be on here complaining about lawmakers threatening our rights. We'd much rather be gaming. But that's pretty much what I've got. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this, and I will see you guys on the next one.